We are starting a new series called, you saw how well I've been paying attention the past few weeks if we've planned for this. You would never know. We spend hours and hours thinking about this stuff. We're starting a new series called Searching for Truth, what Christians believe and why. And you saw kind of in that video some big questions that we're going to try to tackle over the next few weeks. And tonight, we are going to just kind of tackle the topic of God ? Which God ? That can mean all sorts of different things, right? Does anyone have any guesses of what I might be trying to do with God ? Yeah?
What is God?
What is God? That's great. I will throw nerds at you. Anyone else have any good ideas? Now people just want to answer something so that they might have nerds thrown at them. What?
Turn it to God, exclamation point.
Turn it to God, exclamation point. That would be a cool thing too. All right, so here's... I will have to stop throwing candy so you will pay attention to me. When we first started working on this series and I thought of doing the God ? Topic, starting it with that, honestly, what I really thought that I was going to spend tonight doing was talking about science and pulling out all sorts of scientific research and all sorts of stuff. Like there's scientists that say like it's more probable that God created the earth than like a wind to sweep through a junkyard and create an airplane, like stuff like that. But really, I know nothing about science. And so I kind of was like, I don't know that I should really talk about science at all. And I can talk a ton about theology, but I might just end up talking circles around myself and might just confuse you guys even more. And so I kind of was really thinking, what is the real question in God ? What are we really asking when we say God? Right? Like that's what this is. Like everyone just say, like, read that sentence. God? Why did everyone had to add like a little to that for some reason? So we're going to look at what is this God ? thing. And I think really what the question there is who is this God? Who is this God? And if there is this God, then what's the purpose? How do we interact with this God? How does this God interact with us? Is it worth interacting with this God? So that's really kind of the question that we're going to sit in tonight. And truly, if we look at this God ? This God thing, we're going to have to set up in one of two camps. And I like to say it's like standing on a mountain.
Pikes Peak?
That is Pikes Peak. If I'm going to use pictures and I can use my own personal pictures, then why not, you know? So if we're going to ask this God ? thing, we're really going to stand on one of two mountains. And I say mountains because those of you who was up at Pikes Peak this summer on Sunshine Tour, right? As you were standing up on that mountain, you were able to look out and see what felt like forever, right? Yeah. You looked at the whole world from up on that peak. And what we're going to say is you're going to stand in two camps. You're going to stand in two mountains. And you're either on the mountain that is saying, there is this God that created the world. And I look at the whole world, all of life, everything in my world from that mountain. Or you're going to say I'm standing on the mountain that there isn't this God. And I'm going to look at the whole world from that mountain. You know what? And the truth is there might be people that are sitting in a valley in between or some sort of hill or precipice or some other mountainy term in between. But we're going to kind of look at that two things. And honestly, what I'm going to do is go ahead and just throw it out there and say, we're standing on the mountain that there is this God that created the universe, that created the world, that created Pikes Peak, and that intimately created each one of us. So we're going to take it from that perspective and go ahead and hop on that mountain and say, that's where we stand. But the question there then, in God ? God is, the question mark is, well, who is this God? What's the purpose of interacting with this God? And what do I do now? And so I kind of want to sweep a little bit through the Old Testament a little bit and start looking at, if we're going to understand this, start looking at how God interacted with some of the first people. So the first people that God interacted with was in Genesis 2, right? Creation story. And God breathed life into the nostrils, the breath of life, and the man became a living being. So God came down, breathed life into humanity, and made it living. Now, in this story, there's all sorts of questions that you can have, like what were the details of it? And truly, what you have to get out of this story, what we're trying to grasp, what the Hebrew people were trying to grasp when they read this story, was that God gave life. God produced life. It wasn't necessarily about all the details, but that in the beginning, God. In the beginning, there was God, and God created all of these things. And the essence of our life, the breath that we breathe, that is capable, we are capable of that because of God. So we're going to move from there. Now we're going to go to Genesis 28. This is the first story that I have for you. And in Genesis 28, you have this crazy interaction that happens between Isaac and Esau and Jacob. So Isaac was the dad, and it was customary in this tradition in this time for the dad to pass on the birthright to one of the sons. And so what Jacob does, being the cunning person that he is, led by his mother, ironically enough, is he goes and dresses up like his brother Esau, which dressing up like his brother Esau means like making himself real furry, which is weird. But he made himself real furry, and he goes and he convinces his dad, who I guess was poor of sight, to give him his birthright. And so Jacob steals the birthright out from underneath Esau. And so obviously Esau is pretty angry about this and not very appreciative of that. And so what happens is Jacob needs to go into hiding. And so in Genesis 28, Jacob goes into hiding. He runs, and he spent this whole day running away. And finally, he leaves Beersheba, and he set out to go for another faraway land. And when the sun had about to go down, he grabs a rock, which is what anybody would do after a day of hiking, is grab a rock and lay down on it and go to sleep. And Jacob has this dream. And I want to read you this dream. Then he lay down there. He dreamed and saw a raised staircase, its foundation on earth and its top touching the sky. And God's messengers were ascending and descending on it. Suddenly the Lord was standing on it and saying, I am the Lord, the God of your father Abraham and the God of Isaac. And I will give you your descendants, the land on which you are lying. Your descendants will become like the dust of the earth, and you will spread out to the east and to the west and to the north and to the south. Every family of the earth will be blessed because of you and your descendants. And then God says, I am with you now. I will protect you everywhere you go, and I will bring you back to this land. I will not leave you until I have done everything that I have promised. So Jacob, who is continuing the movement of God's people, of the Israelite people, who's continuing that movement, who is the new genealogy, God says to Jacob, he says, I'm going to give you these things, but here's something that I can tell you. As I send you along your way on this journey, I'm going to be with you regardless of what happens. I'm always going to be with you, and I will never, ever leave you, and I will be with you and protect you. So we get this sight into Jacob, God's interaction with Jacob, saying, I am with you in this journey, and I will not leave you. So another interaction that God has with people as we consider who this person is. And I love this story in Exodus 3. Moses is Mosesing along his way, and all of a sudden, That's a word, I think. He's Mosesing along his way, and all of a sudden he notices this burning bush, right? We've heard this story. The burning bush, and God starts to speak to Moses through the burning bush, and Moses takes off his sandals because he's on holy ground, and he interacts with God. And God says to Moses, I'm gonna use you to free my people. You're gonna get out of Egypt, right? And so he says, I'm going to use you to free all of my people. And so here's the thing. Moses understood that this was a God. Like, Moses was all about knowing that this was a God, but the culture in which he's living in, there was many gods. So eventually Moses asked the question, and he says, who am I to tell them that sent me? Because they're going to think I'm wacko. Who am I to tell them that sent me to come do these things? Because there are many gods. And how God reacts is he says just the simple line of, I am who I am, which in Hebrew we know is him uttering the true name of the Lord that is not supposed to be uttered. But it's kind of this tricky play on words to say, I am who I am. Like, he's saying, I'm going to prove to you who it is that I am. Because I'm going to show up to you in big ways, and I'm going to lead you. He says, I am who I am. I am the essence of everything that there is. I am the God. I'm not a God, but I am the God who has brought you to where you are. And just like with Jacob, I will be with you throughout this journey. So we look at three kind of interactions here. In the beginning, God breathing the essence of life into creation, into human beings. Then with Jacob saying, along this journey, no matter where it might take you, I will be with you. I'm not leaving you. And then to Moses saying, I am the essence of life. I am the God who created all. I am always with you. Have you ever searched for something and ended up finding something else? You know what I'm talking about? Like, you were looking for something and then you were like, oh my gosh, my old yo-yo, this is even cooler than what I was looking for. My yo-yo. I don't know why yo-yo popped in my head, but that's what you get. So you're looking for one thing, but you find something else. As we search, I think that there's a good chance that might happen to us. This past week, Tatiana kept asking us for photos of ourselves when we were children in Halloween costumes, right? And because she put, how many did you all see those up on Instagram? Yeah, if you didn't raise your hand, then you need to follow us on Instagram. Okay, you saw them. So I went, trying to be a good coworker, and I went and searched for some Halloween pictures, which it's not necessarily what I found, because you always find something else when you're searching, but I am going to show you my Halloween photos from when I was a kid, because I did find those. Yes, I am the one in the back. No, just kidding, I'm the clown in the front. It was a crazy Halloween. Here's the thing about this picture, I don't even think that was Halloween. I think that was just some day that my sister was like, here, you're going to be a clown. And I was like, okay. And I really didn't have any options. And then here, I think this photo is so funny because this was before I started going to church, before I was a church kid. And I think I was in the 6th or 7th grade, and I really wanted to be a devil. I don't know why, but a friend of mine who went to church invited me to a youth Halloween party. Not even thinking about it, I went as the devil. Which I think is just, I now look back at it and just cringe. I went to a Halloween party at a youth group dressed as the devil. How did I do that? Okay, I digress. So as I was searching for these pictures, I have this hard drive that when I was looking through my mom's computer, I just took all of her pictures and I threw them on this hard drive. And so I knew there would be some on there. And so this past week I pulled it out and was looking for these pictures for Tatiana to post on Instagram. And I found something else that was really kind of cool. I found this document. I'm looking through the tiny little images, so you got to click on some of them to figure out what it is. And I go through and I see one that looks just like a hand holding a document. I'm like, this is odd. And so I click on the document and I pull it up, and there's this old school like typewriter, like I'm talking like typewriter thing, document that's just titled Your Baby. And I'm like, this is weird. And so I look at this document, and you can't really read it there, and it doesn't really matter. But I started reading this document, and it was a document that was about this child, this young baby. And it was telling all of these stories about how this is what your child's like. This is your child gets fussy when, and this is how to soothe this child, and this is what this child likes to eat and how often, and this is how connected this child feels like with its caregiver. And I'm reading this, and I'm trying to kind of figure what it is, and finally I'm kind of like peeking around my office door because tears start streaming down my face when I realize this is the letter that was written to my grandparents when they adopted my mother. And so they had no idea who this baby was that they were about to adopt. And so I'm sure they get this letter, and I'm starting to imagine how overjoyed my grandparents must be getting this letter, like the first documentation they have on their soon-to-be daughter. And they know these kind of crazy, intimate details that only a parent would know, like how to soothe this child in the middle of the night, what this child likes to eat, the noises that this child makes when it's interacting with other babies, and stuff like that. They get to know all of these intimate details, and I can only imagine the love that my grandparents already started to have for this child. And as the pastor, I couldn't help but to start to see God in this story. See, I think that this is really kind of what it looks like from God's perspective. God knows all these crazy, intimate details about us. The God that created all the universe and the world and us knows all of these crazy details about us. Regardless of what we know about this God, there is this God that looks and knows all of these things about us and is so joyful to look at us, to read a letter like this about us. So I don't necessarily know what kind of place you're in tonight when you're pondering the question, God? When you're thinking God, question mark, I don't know what place that you're in. But here's what I can tell you. That absolutely, without a doubt, the God that created the universe, the world, you, regardless of the questions that you have, of the doubt that you might have in certain areas, the questions that you might stumble upon late at night or early in the morning, or as you're talking with friends, regardless of those questions, regardless of how you see God and how you see, or how you see God, how others might see you, God looks at you with joyful eyes. God is overjoyed about who you are and desires so much to interact with you. And as he talks to Jacob, and as he talks to Moses, he says, regardless of all of those things, regardless of what's going to happen on your search and your journey, I will not leave you. And I will always be with you, looking at you with joyful eyes. Let me pray for us.